an acknowledgement of country. I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the Macquarie University land, the Wadamadagal clan of the Darug Nation, whose cultures and customs have nurtured and continue to nurture this land since the Dreamtime. We pay our respects to elders past, present and future. So today we are hoping to give all of those in attendance some insights into the many, many ways you can use your law degree once you finish and go out into professional life. And we're very fortunate to have with us 5 panelists who are all in very different areas. All of them have studied law, and we're going to find out from each of them how they have applied their law degree and what they're doing now. Plus, I'm sure they're going to share lots of other insights about their own career journey. So our panelists are Jennifer Kwan, Bill Steenson, Emma Holloway, David Lipworth, and Harry Howard. And I'd now like to pass over to Brendan to start getting the panel to introduce themselves and take us through the questions. Thanks very much, Brendan.
Thank you, Vicky. Hi, everyone. My name is Brendan. I'm the current Macquarie University Law Society Secretary. So we'll hand over to the speakers today to introduce yourself, including your company, roles, and study background. So we'll just start with you, Emma.
Hi, everyone. So my name's Emma. So I'm a senior policy officer, and this is a bit of a mouthful, the team name, but it's at the New South Wales Law Reform Commission and Sentencing Council Secretariat. So I'll probably just refer to my team as the Secretariat for simplicity. But we basically sit within the Department of Communities and Justice, which is the state government department. My team supports the work of the Law Reform Commission, which is an independent statutory body, provides legal policy advice to the Attorney General. We get references from the Attorney General and we do research and ultimately produce a report. And we also support the work of the Sentencing Council, which is an independent body that provides advice to the Attorney General on sentencing matters. So in terms of my study background, I completed a Bachelor of Laws and International Studies at UNSW, and I finished that in 2016. I didn't actually do my graduate diploma of legal practice or get admitted as a lawyer until about 4 years later. So I only got admitted in 2020. I was primarily working in sort of social policy before then, before I decided to move into legal policy. So yeah, that's me.
Perfect, thank you. And we'll move along to David.
Hi everyone, my name is David Lipworth. I studied law and finance at UNSW way back when, graduating 2003, and went straight into law. And for the first 10 years of my career, I did mergers and acquisitions at big international firms. So I was at Allens, Linklaters in Sydney, and then Clifford Chance in London, and then Baker McKenzie in Sydney. And then after doing that for a bit over 10 years, I actually left the big firms and set up my own small firm, basically as a sole practitioner, and ran my own firm for a few years. And in the course of doing that, decided that if I was going to be practicing law in my own firm for the rest of my life, I wanted to do it the way I think it should be done, which is automate as much of the manual labor of law as possible. And that got me looking into automation, specifically automating legal drafting. And I couldn't find any tools that I could use to automate documents to the level that I wanted to achieve. So I actually designed my own system and took my kind of life savings and hired a software developer and built some software to use for myself to automate legal documents. And that became the genesis of 2 businesses, of which I'm the founder. The first one is Smarter Drafter, which is a provider of automated legal documents, mostly to small law firms across the country. So we have 220 to 230 law firms across the country who subscribe to Smarter Drafter. It's basically a plug and play solution. We've automated all of the documents across a whole bunch of different practice areas. And when a law firm signs up, they gain access to everything. And then we've just recently, about a year ago, launched the technology that powers Smarter Drafter as a standalone platform that anyone can use to automate their own content, and that's called RuleStar. So I'm the co-founder and managing director of RuleStar at the moment, and I'm actually in a side room at the Legal Innovation and Tech Fest in Sydney at the moment, which is running today and tomorrow, where we're kind of taking RuleStar to market. So it's an exciting time.
No, thank you. That does sound exciting. Hopefully we can dive a little deeper into some of those things as well later on. And along to Jennifer.
Hi, so I studied Parks Law in Macquarie, graduating in 2014, so 8 years ago. Currently, so my title was, and I was most recently working in digital payments in Commonwealth Bank, so as a product owner. So for those who may not know what a product owner is, essentially you'll see that role in a lot of the tech companies where the product owner is the person who is the end-to-end accountable owner for a product. So it may be Spotify as your product, or the For You page, or a page in that, or Atlassian as your product, or Jira Tools as your product, and you look after everything about it, how it's developed, what should be made, or how it should be marketed, how its sales are going. So as a product owner, I looked after digital payments in CommBank, which included our digital wallet capability, like Apple Pay, integrating with Google Pay and things like that. And I also looked after some of the kind of security technology around digital payments to make CommBanks like as secure as it is. Most recently, in my current role now, which has only been about a few weeks, I did get promoted. So I'm an executive manager of the product owner community. What that means is that I lead about 200 of the product owners for the retail bank in CBA, making sure that across all the different products that we have, whether it's home loans, credit cards, the CommBank app, NetBank, that we've got a consistent standard and practice to ensure that we're leading, world-leading customer outcomes.
Perfect, thank you. And Bill?
Thanks, Brendan. So I work for a thing that's called the Registered Organisations Commission, and as the name suggests, we regulate registered organisations. What they are employer associations and unions. So we regulate them in the same way that ASIC regulates companies. So we've got a lot to do with behaviour of office bearers, whether organisations are meeting their legal obligations, arranging their elections, and we also run a whistleblower scheme, which keeps it interesting. My role is leading the compliance and the protected disclosures side of that. And by way of a study background, I studied arts as my first undergraduate degree and then completed law. I've since gone back and done studies in public administration.
Awesome, thank you for that. And lucky last, Harry.
G'day. I graduated from Macquarie with a Bachelor of Commerce and a Bachelor of Law. I then, luckily or unluckily, had an idea that I wanted to practice in the realm of criminal defence from very early on in my university career. So, as part of the PLT program, you need to have a certain amount of days to finally get admitted. I managed to get a place where I am now at John B. Hadji and Associates. It's a small firm just based in Castlereagh Street in the city. While we do some small commercial matters and conveyances, the vast majority of our practice is concerned with crime. And so I finished out the sort of intern period there and was employed as a solicitor, and here I am now. A bit less hair, a few greys, but it's incredibly interesting area to work in. Yeah, that's me.
Thank you for that. So we'll move along to our first question. And we've touched on a little bit with the introductions in terms of your career paths thus far. So how did you get to your current role? And for those who didn't end up practicing law, how does your legal training assist you in your role? So we'll just hand over to Emma.
So I started my career working in government. I actually started in the New South Wales Government Graduate Program, which is a program run by the Public Service Commission, and you essentially do 3 rotations through totally different government departments and teams. So I did 3 6-month rotations, one at the Department of Family and Community Services, which has actually been merged with the Department of Justice and is now where I'm the department that I sit in as well. And I was in the Secretary's office for that. I then went and did 6 months working in policy at the Telco Authority, which is responsible for government radio networks, so the networks that the police use and the Rural Fire Service. So that was completely out of my comfort zone, but pretty interesting in the end. And then my final rotation was working in a particular child protection area, still policy, but working in child protection policy. So I then applied for a role at Women New South Wales, which used to be responsible for domestic and family violence policy and gender equality policy and programs as well for the whole of government. And I found that my sort of varied experiences in those different rotations was really helpful in assisting me to get that role. It was still very much in social policy. Through that role, I sort of had some interactions with people working in legal policy and started to become really interested in that area. So it sort of emerged between different policy and program areas and law, so working in legislative reform and things like that. And it was at that point I decided to do my graduate diploma and get admitted as a lawyer. And then I got really lucky that this job came up at the Secretariat, so I applied for that and was fortunate in getting this role. So in my current role, my law degree helps enormously. It's quite a legal role, not in the sense of practicing, but in the sense of going through legislation, making recommendations for reform and change, do a lot of research around case law and things like that. But in my former roles, more in the social policy areas, I still found my law degree really useful. In government, there's so much to do with laws, policy, procedures. So having a law degree is so helpful in helping you navigate those things. So yeah.
Thank you. And it's exciting to hear that there's programs out there to get a deeper experience into some of the practice groups within policy and governance as well. And we'll just hand over to Bill.
Thanks, Brendan. So while I was studying, I was working for a regulator. So it was what's now Safe Work New South Wales, who regulate workplace safety. What I'd done was being involved in the training team there and support for the inspectors who went out. So when I was admitted, I was able to do my PLT placement with the legal branch and then move into a solicitor role there. That was work health and safety prosecutions and coronial inquests and things like that. So fortunately for me, when the time came that I was getting a bit tired of that, there were a couple of commissions of inquiry running, including one into the Royal Commission into Trade Union Governance and Corruption. So moved across into that, and as I like to refer to it, my current boss rescued me from there just as it was finishing up. So moved into the field that I'm in now. Certainly, the thing that I found that the legal training has really assisted with is because we're dealing with a lot of organisations who are trying to just get on with running the thing and want some practical solutions from us. The law training provides a really good counterpoint to us just thinking, oh, well, we'll just go with the vibe and this feels like it'll be an okay solution, because the reality is that the decisions that we make can be challenged in the courts. And so while, one of our objectives is trying to help and trying to regulate, we need to do that with some solid legal basis.
Awesome, thank you. And David?
Yeah, so I definitely couldn't have built what we've built with Smarter Drafter without having studied law or practiced as a lawyer, because basically a lot of the products, certainly all of the first products that Smarter Drafter ever launched, so automated legal documents, mostly automated contracts, I built them. And I'm still essentially the head of legal at Smarter Drafter. So if a product is going to be released into the Smarter Drafter range, I have to approve it before it gets released. And basically, unfortunately, a law degree doesn't actually teach you how to draft legal documents. You spend most of your time when you're studying law, you're looking at appeals cases and what judges have said, and you're learning about the law, which is useful, but you're not learning how to actually practice law. And even your PLT doesn't really teach you how to open up Microsoft Word and create a contract that's going to be legally binding and do what it's supposed to do. And so at the end of the day, I think at least at the moment, learning to be a lawyer is really an apprenticeship. You have to be in a law firm, and at least that's the current system. You basically have to be in a law firm and doing it for a while before you figure out how it's done. And that's what I did in my first sort of 10 years doing M&A at the big firms, and a lot of that was contract drafting, obviously, doing M&A deals. And that's where I learned how to draft legal documents. And that's the skill that's essentially carried me into the tech side now. So even though today my focus is very much on the tech side and actually selling our document automation technology rather than the legal products, without a law degree and without all of that legal training in actually drafting and reviewing contracts and learning how they're drafted, I definitely wouldn't be where I am today.
Well, definitely some food for thought with getting some practical legal experience throughout your studies and beyond. And handing over to Harry as well.
I mean, I agree a great deal with what David just said in terms of the profession being structured similar to an apprenticeship. Having said that, though, what I took away from my study, at least I think what can really be distilled down into is just a process of thought. The ability to deconstruct and then analyze various issues can serve you in amazing ways if you become comfortable with it and then work out how to apply that in all various facets of your life. Obviously, then moving on to practice, it's a good foundation. But for those of you who do ultimately go on to practice, don't be afraid when you get into the job and you realize that there's a whole heap more to do than uni. But yeah, I think it's the process of thought that you learn that really can be applied to anything.
Awesome. And lastly, Jennifer as well.
Yeah, so I've probably got the most alternative path here, but how I use my law degree. So I think I started actually as a HR graduate, and then I moved from HR to product management to digital products. And that was just as a nuance of when I first started in products, we didn't have so many digital products there, but more and more your products are now digital. And it doesn't seem like it's very connected to law or my law degree. I did do PLT, but I didn't become a practicing lawyer. But I do find like I've never regretted doing a law degree. And actually, it's actually a strength in my company, and banking loves law, for one. But any product that you deliver, whether it's digital, whether it's a bricks and mortar product, whether you run your own business, you can't launch a product without knowing the legal landscape. You can't, or the regulatory landscape. Can't launch it without a T's and C's, can't launch it without being able to read every line of comms to see where it could be litigated against or complained against or take it to an ombudsman. So you find that the law degree helps you read essentially and understand that landscape better. And even if you work in a corporation like I do in CommBank, where we have in-house lawyers, you find that there's a lot of internal debate in terms of what sentences could mean, or I could write this whole page of T's and C's, but then that will mean that my acquisition funnel will go crazy and customers won't continue. And so when balancing that out, you find you can speak with your internal legal partners much quicker than your peers. And you find that you can kind of navigate the regulatory landscape and risks much quicker as well. So I would say, and I guess me being in product probably started off with wanting to do a job that would help with more entrepreneurial skills and commercial skill sets, that my law degree has probably helped me be a differentiator rather than the more traditional path of a lot of our product owners coming from a tech background or an engineering background.
Well, it's reassuring to hear that the recurring theme that studying law can provide a strong foundational set of skills to take in many directions. So moving along to our next question, what should aspiring lawyers know about your area, organization, or industry? And I'll just hand back to Jennifer.
What can they know about my industry? I think I've said most of it, but yeah, like I said, banking loves law. And I think in terms of the tech industry, it's ever changing. More and more, like you see the legal papers talking about, you know, what are we doing about information security? You see what Facebook's doing, you see what, you know, giants like Elon Musk is doing. And it's an incredibly hard world to regulate, or AI. So it's a fascinating space to get into and look at the intersection as well. And it's something that you don't really need to have studied in uni because it moves so quickly. Both law and, well, law you need to study, but like, because they move so quickly, if you're interested in it, it's worth getting the experience in it, and read all you can about it because there's a lot of information out there.
Okay, thank you. And Bill?
Yeah, look, I think one of the really big ones is a recognition that some problems, in fact, quite a lot of them, aren't legal problems. And there's a real ability in being able to pick that and pick what is the issue there, that not every behaviour that someone doesn't like is illegal. And it might be that the solution is, well, if you don't like what the leadership of the organisation is doing, then maybe in a couple of years' time you need to, you know, run for election against them. That's something open to you, that not everything is a crime, and that there are different ways to solve things. Similarly, if there's stuff that's not in our jurisdiction, we don't like to send people away and just say, you know, not ours, go away. If we can provide them with that little bit of value add and try and direct them in a way that's going to potentially help them, then we really want to do that, provide that sort of well-rounded service.
Definitely. And then moving on to Harry.
Well, the first thing would probably be forget everything you've seen on TV. It's not, you know, it's definitely not what you see on TV working in crime. I think patience is probably one thing. I can't speak for the side of the prosecution or the Crown, but I generally meet people on some of their worst days. And so being able to wade through the verbal diarrhea that is thrown at you, I mean, they're trying to get all of the information out quickly and they don't know where to go. Being able to wade through that and sort of cut down to the heart of the issue is something that, you know, it's hard to get a grasp of, but it's something that you can definitely learn. I think that's something that is important to focus on, and ultimately remembering that you're dealing with human beings on both sides. Your clients are human beings, the police officers are human beings, and ultimately the magistrates, judges, and justices are all human beings as well. It's as much as unhelpful as this statement is, it's as simple and as hard as that.
No, thank you. And it's definitely the interpersonal element of criminal law that kind of draws my interest at times as well. David.
Okay, so my industry is legal technology, right? So I'm a believer that there's an entirely different job that is evolving right now. And a lot of people are calling that job like legal engineer. Okay, so instead of being necessarily a lawyer, you might be a legal engineer, or you could call it legal product developer or something like that. And the difference is between being a lawyer who provides a service to, say, draft a legal document or provide some legal advice, versus being someone legally trained, but also tech savvy and trained in using certain legal tools, who will build a legal product that combines the legal knowledge with also technology to solve some kind of problem. And a lot of that is, I believe, going to be document automation, which is why we've invested so heavily in it. I do encourage everyone to get a job as a lawyer if you can, even if that doesn't have to be at a big firm. It can be at a suburban local firm. It can be anywhere. But I think it is important for lawyers, if you're interested in practicing as a lawyer, to feel what it feels like to have to record your time, because the reality is that you're still on the clock. Like, a lot of legal work is switching to fixed price, but not that much actually. Especially at the big firm end of town, you're mostly recording your time in 6-minute increments. And I think everyone should feel what it feels like to live like that, and to be kind of beholden to clients, and to have all of that responsibility, and to work in a manual way, because law firms traditionally, they weren't incentivized to be productive. They were actually rewarded for being unproductive. The longer it took for something to be done, the more you could bill for it. So there wasn't really a lot of historical incentive with that model to become efficient. But all of that is changing, and I think that if you go and try that and you experience frustration with it, as I did, and you believe that there's a better way, and you want to do things more productively and efficiently and so on, and you don't want to reinvent the wheel, then you might be a really good candidate for that legal engineer role. And those sorts of positions are going to be coming up more and more within law firms, where clients of law firms are going to come to law firms and say, build this for me. It's not going to be, I want you to draft an employment contract for me. They're going to say, I want you to build an automated employment contract for me, so that whenever I need to bring on a new staff member, I just go to this tool and I enter their details and make the choices and so on, and their employment contract is automatically generated. So that's this new role that I believe very strongly in. And if I was a young lawyer right now, that accords with my value system, and my interest would definitely be in trying to find a way into that sort of legal engineer, legal product developer type career path.
Yeah, with the ever-changing and developing nature of technology, and the role that the law and the legal sector plays in it, it certainly makes for an interesting sphere for future prospects within the industry. And lastly, Emma.
Yeah, I guess I'll talk sort of more generally about, I guess, government legal policy, but also policy as well. I definitely think there's a misconception that the government legal work is boring and not kind of real legal work, which is partly true in terms of legal policy. But the great thing about the government is there's such a huge breadth of different roles. There's roles in sort of what I do, which is more thinking about policy, I guess, thinking about some of the bigger issues, legislative reform, things like that. So if that interests you, the government is a really great place to go to sort of learn how to do that. It's not advocacy as such. You are, you are serving the government of the day. So it's not an advocacy role as you might get in some other sort of more policy / advocacy type roles in non-government organizations and things like that. So that's something definitely to be aware of. But there's just such a variety, and there's roles in also representing the government in court, more of those sort of typical legal roles as well. So the other thing I would say is, once you kind of get into the government, it's really easy, or much easier, to sort of move around and try out a variety of different roles. So, trying something like the New South Wales Government Graduate Program, if you're interested in government work, or even just trying to get a role within a government department, once you're there, it's moving around is a lot easier. So yeah, that would be my advice.
Well, we might just stay with you for now, Emma, and move along to the next question, just on some of the things that were touched on. Well, what is a good first job for an aspiring lawyer to have before graduating?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of if you're looking at getting into government work, the great thing is there's a huge variety of graduate programs, and I would definitely look into them. It's a great opportunity to try out the different areas and sort of work out what you like and don't like. There's also, a lot of those roles are quite supported. So, for example, in the New South Wales Government Graduate Program, you do a diploma of government, you get a mentor and an executive coach. So it's super helpful to have that kind of support, particularly really early on in your career. The federal government, I know, also do a whole bunch of different graduate programs. So look at those. And I believe now there's sort of policy streams and legal streams too. So if you're more interested in policy work or legal work, you could apply for those different streams. I would also say sort of, I guess, internships or some of the clerkships. So the government runs a few internships and clerkships. So my particular team, we do a winter internship program. So those ads sort of go out in the middle of the year. So keep your eyes peeled for that one. And we also, the border branch, which I sit in, which is called Policy Reform and Legislation, they do a summer clerkship program, which is usually advertised towards the end of the year. And again, it's a good supported way of trying out a few different things and seeing if you like it.
We often hear about the commercial firm clerkships on offer during the middle of the year. So it's also exciting to hear that there's similar programs within governance and policy as well. Harry.
Look, I'd agree with Emma in terms of trying out, just seeing what experience you can get, be it a small suburban firm, a commercial firm, someone that just does conveyancing or anything like that. Try a few different things out, and you might hate it, or you might like it, and it might completely change your mind in terms of the trajectory that you want to take your career. In terms of wanting to get into crime, unfortunately, it's not as structured as a lot of the commercial firms, seeing as a large number of the criminal firms or firms that deal predominantly with crime are a lot smaller. They don't have the same internships, clerkships, and rotations that a lot of these other larger firms do have. But in saying that, I mean, there's no harm in putting your ear to the ground as such, or seeking out a number of different criminal firms if that's where you so choose to go, and just getting in contact and seeing if you can maybe just spend some time there, get some exposure to what actually goes on in the job. But ultimately, I think it really comes back to seeing how much you can actually try, and getting a taste for what you like can really set you up for once you graduate and once you get through college.
Awesome. Well, with just knowing the time, we might move on to the next question for the other panelists. So with the vast amount of experience that you have gathered thus far, what are some of the ways that professionals should continue to upskill to stay competitive within your industries and reach the level that you have attained? And I might just throw this to Bill.
Sure. So look, I think the thing from me would be to say that try and be open to drawing lessons from parallel or unrelated areas that you're in. You can go off and do a session on dispute resolution and come away with ideas for other parts of your practice. Even things as simple as dealing with challenging situations or people. Just taking the time to think about those particular issues from a different frame can really help inform you, rather than just the sort of traditional, must go and do another course, must go and do another course kind of approach.
Definitely. Jennifer?
Yeah, so I would say with each role, you know, as you go through your career, you're going to actually do quite a few different roles. And whether it's completely different industries, whether it's the same and progressing. And I guess the way to stay up to date and just immerse yourself, connect with people around you. A lot of the learnings you're going to get, I mean, I know the internet has everything, but a lot of the learnings you're going to get are from the people that you are inspired by, believe in, and that can kind of talk your language. So find those people and learn from them, connect with them, have sponsors, have mentors. And stay open, I think. So you're gonna, there's been periods where I've been in a position that I thought, you know, like I've done a subject and I really enjoyed it, but in practice I actually hate it. But even those experiences can teach you a lot about what you like and don't like. And so every part of that is a good stepping stone to know, and you even find that some things that you used to like, a couple of years later, you might actually change. So I don't think any career is static. And I think that it's to keep up to date is one, the people around you, and two, and the connections you can make, and two, around just immersing yourself in each role, even the ones you might not like, to really understand what is it about this role that I don't like exactly, so I know my next move.
And staying on this question of staying competitive within the industry, David.
So the thing with upskilling or learning or studying in legal tech is I'm not really aware of any way, in a formal way, to do that. Legal tech's one of those things where it's evolving all of the time and there are new tools coming out, for example, our tool. And I think the only way to really be part of it is to be interested and get involved. And something that I've seen, which was completely not on my radar at all when I was a uni student, but which in hindsight and now having been on the other end, I think it's actually genius and super important, is just internships. And I don't care if they're paid or unpaid internships, just do them. Like, it was completely anathema for me to consider like working for free, you know, as a uni student. Just let that go and just go do unpaid internships everywhere that's interesting to you. Anything that you're passionate about, anything you're curious about, go and do an internship there, even if it's unpaid. Because firstly, that might be your way into a job. We employed a bunch of people who did unpaid internships with us and blew us away at various things, and we were like, wow, that person's really awesome, let's hire them. So that's one really great way to get in a foot into a career, is actually through an unpaid internship. But also you'll learn so much, and that's how you'll get exposure to different tools and different things that you might realize or end up being passionate about. So I would just say get out there, get involved, and do as many internships as you possibly can.
Awesome. Now we are approaching the Q&A session, so if any students present do have some questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or we can get to them just shortly. Just lastly, just a quick question in terms of what networks, professional bodies, or industry events should students consider being part of within your particular industry? And I'll just start with Emma.
There's a few. I think it's called the New South Wales Community Policy of Practice. That's sort of a network for policy professionals. But I think, as I said as well, particularly early in your career, definitely be looking into the graduate programs. They often go to unis and do sort of like open day type or discussions. So if there's any of those, I would definitely recommend going and asking the people there questions like how to apply and things like that. The one thing with government is there is quite a specific kind of recruitment process, and once you sort of learn how to do it, it's much easier the next time. But it can be quite, I guess, difficult for people straight out of uni to kind of understand the application process and interview process. So I would definitely be going to any of those any sort of government information days or anything like that. Yeah,
definitely. And over to Harry in terms of networks, professional bodies, or industry events.
Yeah, there's I know the Law Society of New South Wales ultimately, if you do end up choosing to practice, they've got various panels that you can be a member of. There's young lawyers, the young lawyers panel, where it's essentially across people from all practice areas. And then there are also your specialist panels as well. So there's a criminal panel and your corporate and property and things like that. I mean, they can be useful if for the only reason it's a way to meet other people working in your area. I think they're the main ones that I've really come across.
Definitely. And how does somebody get involved with one of those panels?
So there's the application process for that, or at least signing up to it, is all run through the Law Society itself. So once you I mean, it's optional to be a member. They're the people who issue your practicing certificates in this state anyway. The application process is run through them, and it's as simple as going on to the Law Society website. They've got the information there, as well as it's an online application process. And that way you'll be opened up to events, regular publications, so newsletters, things like that, what's happening in your practice area, and other events, sort of networking events as well.
Awesome. And within that sort of tech industry, David, what would you suggest getting yourself involved in terms of networks and events?
As a uni student, I'm not 100% sure, to be honest, because the industry associations are kind of not set up so well for students to get involved. Now, for example, like the event we're at today, the Legal Innovation and Tech Fest, it would be amazing for uni students to be here, but I don't know what the cost of a delegate ticket is for the 2 days, but it's probably $1,000 or more than $1,000 to come, and uni students are just not going to do that. So I'm not 100% sure where uni students should be looking. There's an association called ALTA, the Australian Legal Technology Association. And I think that's probably a good place to start. I know that they do a lot of online events, which will obviously be much more accessible. And hopefully they allow students to be involved, although I'm not 100% sure about that. So it is a little bit different. So there's legal tech, and then there's also just entrepreneurship in general. So if you're a lot of law students go into law because of the sort of general opportunities that it opens up, and if you're one of those law students who has entrepreneurship in mind, and you've got an idea for a startup, and you kind of want to get potentially use your law degree to kind of leverage into entrepreneurship, then it's a lot easier as a student. There'll be a lot more meetups, a lot more things you can just find online, groups like StartMate and Antler and so on, where you can connect with people and sort of workshop your ideas and take it from there. So it's there's kind of like legal tech's a bit harder for law students. Entrepreneurship in general is definitely easier.
Well, thank you for that. We might just take a pause for a moment and open it up to our attendees in case they have any burning questions that they wanted to ask any of our panelists. Feel free to pop it into the chat or pop your hand up and turn your camera on if you want.
Nothing coming through yet.
Well, we might just move on to some of these other questions that we've got here. In terms of, say any of our attendees that are looking to find employment with any of your industries, is there any certain avenues to do so, or websites that you would suggest? And I'll just open this up to any of our panelists who might have any ideas for this.
Yeah, the College of Law website itself also has a job seeking function. You can filter it in terms of practice areas or types of areas within the legal profession that you're after. But drawing on what David said, is try getting in contact with, if there's a place that practices an area that you like, or something you find interesting, try getting in contact with them. It may not be a paid position. It may not even be something that's, has a lot of structure to it, but you do have the chance of getting some exposure, and that'll, you'll be able to glean some sort of insight from that.
Bill, any suggestions for students seeking employment within your sort of field?
Yeah, look, I think as Emma alluded to before, the grad programs are fantastic, and when you go and talk to people about those, you'll also get an insight into other ways of getting in. That while it's a really valuable program, I know that a couple of the people who are working with me at the moment have gone along and said, well, we're just going to apply for roles on the inquiry line or whatever else, and giving people assistance with fair work type matters. And that really provides them both with some experience in the field that they're interested in, and also with that really valuable dealing with people, helping solve problems skill set, which is really highly regarded. The other thing I'd say in that regard is if people go down the sort of paralegal path, when you come to apply for jobs or you come to update your LinkedIn profile, explain a bit about what you've done as a paralegal, because it can range so greatly from, I did photocopying right through to I appeared in front of a tribunal. So getting a bit more of an understanding of what you've done and the skills you bring is really, really valuable when we come to recruit.
It was a nice little segue touching on the government graduate programs. We have a question from one of our attendees, Gloria, inquiring as to whether the government graduate programs are highly competitive and how many graduates are usually accepted in the program. Emma?
Yeah, they are competitive. The program that I did, I'm not sure. I think I was in the 2017 cohort, so I'm not sure what the more recent ones are like. But I think there was a couple of thousand people that applied, and I think they took about 150. That being said, I think as a law student, you're in really good stead. A lot of the people who got into my cohort had a law degree, the skills and also I think it was Harry talking about going and getting as much experience, doing internships, things like that are super helpful. But I wouldn't worry sort of too much. The recruitment process is pretty rigorous. But as I said, I think going in and asking for advice, reaching out to people who've gone into the graduate program previously, asking their advice on how to answer interview questions, how to frame your resume, things like that, is super helpful. So yes, it's competitive, but it's definitely worth giving a go.
So we've got another question from one of our attendees, Celine, inquiring about noticing that firms are more inclined towards hiring residents and citizens. In what ways can an international student look for part-time or casual employment and opportunities in law? I'll just open that up to anyone who might have some advice for that.
I'll jump in on that. Look, we've had people who've come to work for us who have not, been like Australian citizens. We've had people working with us who've worked remotely from overseas, and we've even then worked to sponsor them for them to, migrate to Australia. So I think it does come back to what I was saying before about getting your foot in the door. It is going to be hard, definitely harder if you're an international student to find those sorts of particularly permanent positions. But opportunities are there if you're willing to kind of go out on a limb a bit. And once you're in and you impress, then your employer may end up, being willing to even bend over backwards to kind of keep you. So goes back to getting in there and getting involved. And even if that means doing it in an unpaid internship.
Awesome. And I'll direct this to you, Jennifer, in terms of any recommendations for junior law students interested in alternative legal careers? Sorry, just on mute.
Oh my God, it's not working anymore. Okay. Echoing a few of my colleagues here. So I think I got in through CommBank. It's a graduate program in HR, so completely different. And before that, I did internships. So my first internship was actually as a recruiter, which is completely random. And I actually got introduced that via Enactus Macquarie, which I think is still around. So in terms of recommendations specifically interested in that, the way that I kind of became interested in things outside of law was one, curiosity in terms of what, stress testing myself in terms of what would I regret not understanding about the future workplace. And then actually getting involved in broader communities, like I was a big part of Moles doing mooting negotiations, which I really enjoyed. But I also got involved in Enactus and played a lot of several hats there, like as a HR, as a marketing, as a project manager. And that kind of helped me experience what it could like simulate, almost like a simulation. And then that simulation helps get me to internships as well. And I think the other recommendation I have is there was a question around marks as well. And I can candidly say I was not the best law student. I either had really high or really, really low. And I guess I just did not spend my uni time as well as you guys probably are. But the way that I think I've been able to overcome that is by, you know, being really open and talking to a lot of people and showing myself to be more than my marks. And so any kind of student body or organization that opens you up to new people, like Lucy mentoring or things like that, where you can ask people directly about it, is a really good way to figure out, one, does it resonate with you? Two, do you feel aligned to that sort of personality and that type of people? And can also get your foot in the door, sometimes in a bit of a different way.
No, thank you for sharing that. We are starting to approach the end of today's session, but just a couple last questions. So with some students now giving consideration towards clerkships and other graduate programs, or programs that offer during the year, during the middle of the year, any advice heading towards that period of time in terms of preparation, or how to handle potentially the extra burden of the application process as well while studying?
Brendan, I might jump in there if that's okay. I certainly think people should put a genuine effort into the application. If it's a half-baked, I'm just putting in a general cover letter that I've used for another job, then the result's going to reflect that. So have a look, and if it means you then say, well, I'm going to just apply for these 3 or 4 instead of everything, so be it. But the other thing I think in terms of the intimidation and the overwhelming sort of feeling there is that while they are really, really good opportunities, it is not the end of the world if you miss out on one. There are plenty of other options available. I didn't do a clerkship. I'm doing okay. So it's certainly one where just have a look around and say, well, what other opportunities are there available for me where I can get some skills? If you're going through a general intake rather than through a grad program, then seek out and try and arrange a mentor through some other scheme if you haven't got one through a grad program.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And sorry, I didn't mean to freak anyone out about the government graduate program recruitment process. I mean, it's competitive, but you guys are law students. You're smart, you're driven. You're in a good stead to be applying for those programs. And I totally agree with Bill. If you don't get into one, there's lots and lots of different opportunities. If you don't get into a graduate program, apply for other junior roles in different areas. Sometimes people get into the government, they just apply for a policy officer role, just in a department, and they'll get that role. And straight out of uni. So you never know. And you do have, I think after a lot of the government graduate programs, you can apply for multiple years. So if you don't get in one year, definitely seek feedback as well. I would say if you're not successful, ask why, and then try to build on that for the next time.
No, thank you. That's some advice I'll take forward with those opportunities coming around for me this year. So we have reached the end of our time for questions. I did just want to, on behalf of myself, thank the panelists for sharing your insights and answering the questions. I've personally taken a lot of value from today, and so thank you for that. And I'll hand back over to Vicky.
Thanks very much, Brendan. And just moving down, I just wanted to wrap up with a couple of bits of information in regards to how you can tap into everything that careers and student employment has got to offer. But before we do that, I also would very much like to thank our panelists today for their fascinating insights into such a broad range of career directions that they're all involved in, and their words of wisdom in terms of how students can prepare. It really was a valuable session, and thank you very much to Emma, David, Jennifer, Bill and Harry. Just on the screen now, you'll see how you're able to connect with careers in various ways through Employability Connect. Have a look at our upcoming events. For those who are feeling a bit overwhelmed or stressed out about applying for grad programs, we're there to help you with your resumes, your applications, your selection criteria. So please, you know, tap into all we have to offer, either joining a workshop or booking a one-on-one appointment. We also can help you with interview prep, assessment centre preparation, or any of the other processes along the selection pathway. Have a look at our LinkedIn group and also join our Facebook group. And if you have any other questions, we're available to via email at careers@mq.edu.au, or you can see our phone number there, 98507372. So once again, thank you to the panelists, and thank you to everyone who's come along today. I'm sure we're all a bit wiser about the opportunities out there for us today. And we will, well, I will wait on board now, and I'd ask the panelists, any who are available, if they might like to wait back if there are any final questions. Perfectly fine if you can't wait. I know you're all very busy people. I will stay on board if there's any questions pertaining to the careers side of things. Thank you once again for coming along today, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thank you.